Sparks that I don't remember. Hold and let it shine. Fixing stars to fade away. Fixing stars to fade away. Fixing stars to fade away.
Hello dear friends of Kabala International. We are once again here with Mario Sabán. Thank you for joining us once again here.
Thank you.
This time we are going to deal with the subject of evil. In this case, we are going to do it in a first part, and then we will do a video later on to go deeper into the subject. And before we start the dialogue, I would like to read a text that is in your book here. The Strategies of Satan, Evil from the Hebrew Kabbalah. With which you begin the book in chapter 1. And it says the following. It says, I form light and create darkness. I make peace and I create evil. I am God who does all these things. Isaiah 45:6.
That's right. The verse that you read from the biblical text to me is the master key to the whole conception of evil. Notice that this verse you have chosen, and why I say master key, because what God is saying in the words of the prophet Isaiah is, I create evil. That is, I am responsible for the evil that exists. And here we have a question, because always, especially those people who come from the root of Christianity, they have an idea of the kind God. You would have to think, if a very kind God makes his son to be killed on the cross, which I don't know how much kindness this God doesn't have either. But in reality, God is not really kind. He is God. That is, when someone says God is love, he is limiting it to love. So it means that when something bad happens, you become an atheist, because you say God didn't do anything to help me. Because if God is love and evil exists, it means that there is something that exists in reality that was not created by God. That is completely disproved in this text of Isaiah that you have read. The prophet Isaiah says, in the mouth of God in a way, God enters Isaiah and says, I have created evil. So here you realize that the book of Genesis begins to make sense. Because actually in the book of Genesis, the representation is the serpent. I say the serpent and not the serpent because in Hebrew it is Nahash, it is masculine. And it is the serpent, the Nahash. The first thing we know is that it was created by God. Because if everything is created by God, what happened to the serpent? Did it wander around and create itself? It did not create itself. So first question, the serpent or the snake is an animal created by the divinity in representation of evil. And then it appears, and in principle it is not mixed, it is there. It means that what we could say that evil was within the structure of the cosmos, within the structure of the universe, but it had not yet made a bridge in the human being, but from what we know from the narrative, that we had to eat a forbidden fruit. It says the apple, that was an invention of St. Augustine. We believe in the Jewish tradition that it was probably the vine, which was the forbidden fruit, which is more logical. It's like they got drunk in the Garden of Eden. But well, beyond the question, I would say, narrative, anecdotal, the important thing here is what lies behind this whole situation. That is, what is going on here behind all this? Because if God created evil, God is evil? No, God is neither good nor evil. God is God, and he created evil for a function, and the function, in a way, is that he first created an imperfect world. In an imperfect world there has to be evil, because if the world would be perfect, evil could not enter there. And then that our work in this universe has to go through merit and through obstacles. This means that if I have a teacher who demands a lot from me to teach a subject, and I believe that this teacher is satanic because he is causing me discomfort due to his demands, thanks to this teacher, I am growing undoubtedly because I have a demand. So what happens in the system is that evil was created because it has a function. Of course, when one has pain as a product of evil, the concept that we are bringing is not a grace, because it is a concept that does not take away the pain. That is, there is pain. It is clear. But the question is, why does evil exist? That is to say, why in this text can we say that God is responsible for evil? Why does he insufflate evil? What is his situation? For what reason? Because there is another text in Isaiah that is, if I remember correctly, in the 25:8 that says, "And I will put an end to evil and death forever in the world of the future, in the messianic era." So, well, I put evil, but be careful, this is not going to be forever, because at some point I am going to bring evil and I am going to slit its throat, it says. I am going to bring evil and death and I am going to finish it. So it means that evil has a temporary function. That is to say, it is helping us for a while, and when it fulfills its function, it will disappear. Of course, the first question is that, in an imperfect world, this evil challenges us in some way to try to understand what it is challenging us in. Let's take an example. Let's take an example from before they ate from the tree and follow the Genesis narrative. It says that they were in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. Okay, Adam and Eve, as we say to Eve in Hebrew, were in the Garden of Eden. What were they doing in Garden of Eden? Not studying, not working. The Garden of Eden was not paradise, because the word paradise comes from the Greek. The Garden of Eden was limbo. Those people did nothing all day. They had no desire to do anything. They were in a kind of meaninglessness of life. I mean, people think that was paradise, but that was more than paradise, it was hell, because there was nothing to do there. They were naked, two people who didn't know what to do with their lives. They didn't procreate, they didn't make their home, they didn't study, they didn't work. But what were they doing there? So the first thing we have to understand is that this idea that the Garden of Eden is paradise is an idea that is not correct. The Garden of Eden was not paradise. The Garden of Eden was limbo. Everything in the Garden of Eden that Adam and Eve had was not of their own merit. It was because they received it for free, and that in Kabbalah we call bread of shame. The one who receives something without having worked for it has no merit. It is like receiving an inheritance, and I worked for the inheritance. No, the inheritance came to me. There was like a complete inheritance. They had nothing to do all day. Then, when they were expelled from the Garden of Eden, then they realized that now they have to work, now they have to study, now they have to transform, now they have to create, now opa, now they have to... But of course, now all this makes sense. All this makes sense. Before, in the Ganed, in the Garden of Eden, nothing made sense. They were there with no sense. No sense what they were doing there. They were sort of God's puppets, where they were sort of too useless as God's puppets, doing absolutely nothing. That's why it was limbo, and limbo is hell. Because really, how long can you stay in that situation? So when the serpent comes in, actually, the party started. When the serpent comes in, he tells them, you know what? There is another world. There is another world where you are going to know what is good and what is evil, where you are going to be aware of what is going on here, because you too are two ignorant people, ignorant of reality. You, when you eat, you are going to know knowledge. And notice the curious thing, Nacho, about all this. When you eat from the tree of good and evil. In reality, it seems to be, as the concepts were sold to us, that they ate only from the tree of evil. It's like, really, how bad is the serpent? Because they ate from the tree of evil. No, gentlemen. And why isn't the serpent good? Because we ate from the tree of good and evil. Why from the tree of good and evil did they cut off our good? That is, the serpent was not 100% evil, because actually there was 50% good that they were giving us as well. I mean, we could see what was good and what was bad. We could discern. We could raise the level of consciousness. So we have to check everything. Who in the tradition imposed on us that that tree was of evil? That tree is not evil. The biblical text says that this tree is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It means that the serpent led us to know evil, but he led us to know good, which Danieva did not know good either. It means that it is not only about evil. For what reasons was it established that this tree was evil? It is not evil. So we cannot say that the serpent introduced us to evil. The serpent introduced us to the consciousness of good and evil, to the knowledge of good and evil, and the serpent cannot be condemned. because the serpent cannot be condemned for having brought us to the level of consciousness. First, because the serpent is a divine instrument created by God. Therefore, first question, the serpent is not an entity apart from divinity. God creates the serpent and introduces it. He does not introduce it only to produce evil. He also introduces it to divide good and evil, and to know what is evil in the face of good. Therefore, there is something good in having eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Of course, all this we have to try to explain because so many centuries of distorted tradition, people believe, and it is repeated, it was a fallen angel. Was it a fallen angel that made you also know good? This is not a fallen angel. This is not a fallen angel. Where did this angel fall to? I don't see him as very fallen. Besides, it means that the fallen angel, God could not rectify it. It fell because God wanted it to fall. In other words, in reality, if God is omnipotent, because if we say that Satan is totally autonomous and God has no power over him, it implies that God is not omnipotent. He is omnipotent in everything and impotent with Satan. How are we going to declare God impotent with Satan? We have to start from the basis that he has omnipotence, and if he has omnipotence, he is directing Satan for his function. Now the second part is, what is the function of evil then? The function of evil is our growth at the level of consciousness.
The good ultimately is not to not have a problem, but to know how to overcome it. Isn't it?
Sure, and evil is like still not being able to overcome it. I mean, evil is an obstacle that you have there that you don't know how to overcome.
That's right.
And when you know how to overcome it, then it's good. But notice, don't you? I mean, this obstacle is there so that when you overcome it, what happens when you overcome it? When you overcome it, you enter another level of consciousness. That is, you raise the level of consciousness when you overcome the obstacle. If you had no obstacle, you cannot increase the level of consciousness.
Yes, in short, it is a function that works for the good.
It is that evil, we in Kabbalah do not call it darkness, we call it dark light. So it is all light. So of course, when you say it is all light, how is it all light? There are people who say it is not all light. And yes, because in the tradition they call it Lucifer. Because in reality, he is an angel of light. What happens is that he is an angel of light that plays with the darkness so that you see the light. I mean, that's the thing. It looks like it's dark, but it's actually a darkness that is in the service of the light. All the darkness is in the service of the light. Otherwise, there's no point in darkness.
You can't manifest the light.
And also because there is no point in darkness, not only for the light to manifest, but because the darkness itself would have no function. So the situation that arises here is that one has to see all this functioning of evil from a point of view of the root unity of monism. That is, there can't be somebody who says, well, I'm a monotheist, but I believe there's a fallen angel who is completely insurgent, who nobody can control, and a God who escapes him, and this rebel goes around doing his thing. So when I have evil, it's Satan, and I'm saying it means, God, you didn't help me for some reason.
Of course, ultimately that duality, isn't it, that is produced by having a conception that God is not, let's say, the unifying infinite. It is, I don't want to be polemical, but it is a covert polytheism. God is good, God is bad,
well,
God
in
is
principle,
good, God is bad.
Without reaching polytheism, it is already dualism. That is to say, dualism is at the moment in which it is as if you have two powers, a power of evil and another power of good. Well, look, Manichaeism. Manichaeism in the Roman Empire, in the first centuries of Christianity, was a religion that almost took over the power of the Roman Empire. People were very Manichaean, and Christianity, in a way, ended up very much influenced by Manichaeism. Christianity's analysis of the concept of Satan within the Christian tradition is very Manichaean, very dualistic. For this reason, it breaks monotheism at this point. But because it was necessary to win over Manichaeism, and it was necessary to do something Manichaean to reach such a point, that surely people who come from the Christian tradition know that sometimes the God of the Old Testament was called the God of fear, and the God of the New Testament was called the God of love. So, of course, you say, but what is going on here? There is something very strange. There are two gods, that is, there is the God of fear,
right.
And then there is the God of love. Of course, there are two gods. Here there is supposed to be one. Then That one has love and has fear. When you declare that God is only love, we have a very big problem, because everything that is not love is not God. No, what is not love is also God, even though it is hard for us to recognize it. Isaiah's text confirms it, not just my opinion.
Of course, evidently. What happens is that there is a tendency to have a human interpretation of what is the concept of good and evil, which is far away, let's say, from a much broader reality, right?
And above all, because there is a whole problem, which appears especially with St. Paul, in which the redemption from evil comes through the death of Jesus on the cross. Christianity is very much trapped in the concept of evil, because otherwise there is no redemption in the cross, and otherwise Paul's theology would not work. But if one leaves Paul's theology, let's say, one understands perfectly well the concept of evil unified with good. But of course, having a theology like Paul's complicates, I think, the dualism. That is to say, you need evil to be very much in force so that somehow someone can absolve you, someone can forgive you. There is a rather dangerous theological plot here, because in reality both good and evil come from God.
Well, and ending, let's say, with a popular saying that every cloud has a silver lining, as grandmothers used to say, isn't it? They were wise.
That's right. Grandmothers were wise.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, Mario, thank you very much.